In the vast, uncharted expanse of deep space, where the echoes of dying stars and the whispers of ancient civilizations fade into the cold silence, something new is stirring. A force, unlike any humanity has ever encountered, is awakening. It's not a weapon, not a conqueror, but something far more terrifying. A creature that feeds on the very essence of existence itself. The silence. An entity that erases not planets, but consciousness, leaving only hollow shells of life behind, is moving closer to the core of the galaxy. At the forefront of humanity's first true interstellar war, a research station called Kepler-7 has detected an unprecedented quantum anomaly buried deep within the cosmic radiation. Dr. Sarah Chen and her team of scientists uncover a horrifying truth. Hundreds of star systems, alien civilizations, all battling an unimaginable foe, the silence. A being that seeks to perfect consciousness by eradicating all that makes life chaotic, unpredictable, and human. As Earth's brightest minds race to decode the alien messages, a single thought becomes clear. Humanity's very flaw, the emotional chaos of our minds, may be our greatest weapon in a battle for survival. But can we truly survive against a force that consumes thought itself? The clock is ticking, and the silence is moving closer. It doesn't destroy planets, it doesn't burn stars. It erases everything that makes life worth living. Emotion, thought, identity. Earth must answer the call for help, even as we face the terrifying prospect of our own minds becoming the only thing standing between us and oblivion. First Contact Protocol. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palms against her tired eyes, watching the impossible data stream across her monitoring screens for the 17th hour straight. The Deep Space Research Station Kepler-7 hung in the void between stars, its massive sensor arrays designed to detect the faintest whispers of cosmic radiation. What they were picking up now wasn't a whisper, it was a symphony of mathematical screams. Computer, run Analysis Protocol 77 Alpha on the quantum signature patterns, Sarah commanded, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. The AI's synthesized voice filled the lab. Analysis complete. Patterns show 99.7% probability of artificial origin. Recommend immediate consultation with Xenobiology Department. Sarah laughed bitterly. She was the Xenobiology Department. Kepler-7 was humanity's most remote research outpost, staffed by only 12 scientists and a small security detail. The station's mission was simple: monitor the cosmic background radiation for signs of intelligent life. After 6 years of detecting nothing but stellar wind and gamma-ray bursts, Sarah had begun to wonder if humanity was truly alone in the universe. The data she was looking at now answered that question with terrifying clarity. "Maya," Sarah called to the communications bay. "I need you to see this." Lieutenant Maya Patel emerged from behind a bank of quantum processors, her dark hair escaping from a hastily tied ponytail. As the station's chief communications officer and cryptographer, Maya had spent her career searching for patterns in chaos. The expression on her face told Sarah that she'd been seeing the same impossible signatures. "Dr. Chen, I've been tracking these patterns for 6 hours, Maya said, sliding into the chair beside Sarah's workstation. "They're not random cosmic events. These quantum signatures are embedded with mathematical structures I've never seen before." Sarah pulled up a 3-dimensional display showing the incoming data. Waves of quantum information flowed across the hologram like ghostly ribbons, each one carrying patterns of incredible complexity. "How many sources?" "That's the scary part," Maya replied, her fingers dancing across her control interface. 214 confirmed sources, all different star systems, all transmitting similar but distinct patterns. The lab's main door hissed open, and Commander James Morrison strode in with the purposeful gait of a career military officer. At 52, Hawk Morrison had served in 3 interplanetary conflicts before accepting the position as Kepler-7's security chief. His presence usually meant either very good news or very bad news. "Ladies, we have a problem," Morrison announced, confirming Sarah's suspicions about the nature of his visit. "I've been monitoring long-range sensors. These quantum signatures you've been tracking? They're not random background chatter. We're looking at coordinated transmissions from across the galaxy. Dr. Emil Kowalski chose that moment to burst through the lab entrance, his wild gray hair even more disheveled than usual. The theoretical physicist had been working non-stop in his quantum mechanics lab, trying to understand the fundamental nature of the signals. "Sarah, Maya, I've solved it," Emil exclaimed, waving a datapad covered in incomprehensible equations. "The quantum signatures aren't just communications, they're using quantum entanglement as a base language structure. But here's the impossible part. They're using mathematical concepts that our most advanced theories can barely touch." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Emil, are you saying these transmissions are coming from civilizations more advanced than us?" "Not just more advanced," Emil replied, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. "Exponentially more advanced. The mathematical structures they're using as basic communication building blocks represent quantum mechanics applications we won't understand for another 1,000 years." Maya's workstation suddenly erupted with activity. Alert signals cascaded across her screens as the communication array locked onto something new. "I'm getting a focused transmission," she announced. It's targeting our station specifically." Morrison stepped forward. "Explain." "The signal is using our own satellite network's communication protocols," Maya said, her voice tense with concentration. "Somehow they've learned our technology just by monitoring our transmissions. And they're translating." The main display filled with symbols that shifted and evolved in real time. Mathematical equations dissolved into geometric patterns, which reformed into something approaching recognizable language structures. Sarah watched in fascination as alien intelligence worked to bridge the communication gap between species. "Computer, record everything," Sarah ordered. "Maya, can you interface with the translation process?" "I'm trying," Maya replied, her hands flying over her controls. "The translation matrix is incredibly sophisticated. It's using our own linguistic patterns from intercepted broadcasts to build a communication framework." Emil peered over Maya's shoulder at the translation algorithms. "Remarkable. They're using quantum probability matrices to account for the uncertainty inherent in cross-species communication. But why would they want to talk to us specifically?" The answer came in the form of text appearing on the main screen. Simple English words formed from the alien mathematics, carrying a message that changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. "Greetings. Humans of Earth's Sol system. We are the coalition of surviving worlds. Your species has been monitored for 47.3 standard cycles. We require immediate assistance. The silence approaches your galactic sector." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the message. Maya was already typing a response using the established communication protocols, while Morrison activated the station's emergency alert systems. "Ask them what the silence is," Sarah instructed. Maya's query generated an immediate response, and the answer filled the display with text that grew increasingly urgent. "The silence is the ending of thought. It does not destroy worlds or kill beings. It removes consciousness while leaving bodies intact. 214 star systems have fallen silent in 12.7 standard cycles. Billions of beings now exist but do not think, feel, or dream. They live, but they are not alive." Morrison's military training kicked in immediately. "What do they want from us? Why contact Earth?" Maya transmitted the question, and the response made everyone in the lab step back from their screens. "Human neural patterns are unique. Your species exhibits chaotic consciousness. Structures, emotional volatility, irrational decision-making, creative chaos. These traits appear to resist consciousness erasure." 47. Surviving species request military assistance from Earth. Analysis of your broadcast signals indicates significant warfare capability. You are our final hope. Emil sat down heavily in the nearest chair. "They want us to go to war because we're chaotic and irrational?" "There's more," Maya said, pointing to additional text appearing on the screen. "Logical, organized consciousness is vulnerable to the silence. Advanced species, with perfect mental discipline. Fall fastest. Human minds are unpredictable, contradictory, inefficient. These characteristics may be survival advantages. Coalition vessels await at Proxima Centauri. Time is critical. The Silence has detected Earth-estimated arrival in local solar group, 73.2 standard cycles. Sarah looked around the lab at her colleagues. Emil was muttering calculations under his breath, trying to comprehend the implications. Maya continued working furiously to maintain the communication link. Morrison was already activating military emergency protocols. "We need to contact Earth Command immediately," Morrison declared. "If these aliens are right, humanity is about to face something that makes our worst nightmares look like children's games." The alien transmission continued, providing coordinates, technical specifications for faster-than-light communication, and detailed analyses of the Silence's previous attacks. With each new piece of information, the magnitude of the threat became clearer. The Silence wasn't just another hostile alien species. It was something that attacked the very foundation of consciousness itself, leaving behind worlds full of empty husks that retained all the biological functions of life while possessing none of its essence. "Dr. Chen," Maya called out, "I'm receiving tactical data from the Coalition. They're sharing everything they know about the Silence's capabilities and attack patterns." Sarah watched as holographic displays filled with star charts showing the progression of the Silence across the galaxy. Red zones marked systems that had fallen silent. Yellow zones indicated worlds under current attack. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Silence was moving systematically through the galaxy, erasing consciousness wherever it found advanced life. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. Emil looked up from his calculations. "If their timeline is accurate, the Silence will reach the edge of our local galactic neighborhood in about 2 years. Earth itself, maybe 3 years at most." Morrison nodded grimly. "Then we'd better start building the biggest fleet humanity has ever assembled." Over the next 12 hours, Kepler-7 became the center of the most important military mobilization in human history. Sarah worked continuously with the Coalition to establish stable communication protocols, learning more about the Silence's nature and capabilities. The entity appeared to be a form of quantum consciousness parasite that fed on organized thought patterns. Maya coordinated with Earth's military commands, relaying tactical information and establishment procedures for humanity's first interstellar warfleet. The Coalition provided technical specifications for faster-than-light travel and defensive technologies that could potentially protect human consciousness from erasure. Emil collaborated with alien scientists to understand the quantum mechanics underlying the Silence's attacks. The enemy didn't use conventional weapons. It attacked consciousness directly, severing the connection between brain and awareness while leaving the physical body completely intact. Morrison found himself appointed as Earth's liaison for strategic planning with alien military commanders. The irony wasn't lost on any of them that humanity's reputation for violence and warfare had made them the galaxy's greatest hope for survival. "The fleet will be ready in 18 months, Morrison reported during a briefing 6 days after first contact. 300 ships, including our new consciousness warfare vessels, designed with Coalition technology." "And the crews?" Sarah asked. Morrison's expression grew thoughtful. "That's where things get interesting. The Coalition specifically requested that we include soldiers and crew members with what they call optimal neural chaos. People with ADHD, anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar condition, autism, neurotypes that create unpredictable thought patterns." "They want us to weaponize mental illness?" Emil asked, horrified. "They want us to weaponize what makes us human," Sarah corrected. "Our emotional complexity, our irrational responses, our ability to think outside logical parameters, everything that advanced alien civilizations have evolved beyond." Maya looked up from her communication station. "I'm getting reports from the outer Coalition defense lines. The Silence has begun accelerating its attack schedule. It knows we're coming." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Humanity had been discovered not just by the Coalition, but by their enemy as well. The Silence was no longer content to methodically consume the galaxy. It was racing to reach Earth before human consciousness chaos could disrupt its perfect order. "How long do we have now?" Morrison demanded. Maya consulted the alien tactical displays. 18 months, maybe less. Sarah stood at the observation window, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed distant and peaceful. Somewhere among those points of light, an entity was systematically erasing the consciousness of entire civilizations. And humanity, chaotic, emotional, beautifully imperfect humanity, was the galaxy's last hope. "Then we'd better hope that our madness is stronger than their silence," she whispered. As Kepler-7 prepared to become the staging ground for humanity's first interstellar war, none of them could imagine just how literally those words would prove to be. The neural battlefield Admiral Rebecca Sterling stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the impossible sight of 47 different alien species vessels arranged in defensive formations around Proxima Centauri. In her 30 years of naval service, she had commanded fleets through the Saturn Wars and the Martian independence conflict, but nothing had prepared her for humanity's first interstellar battle formation. "Admiral, the Coalition flagship is requesting permission to come aboard," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the communications station. "Granted," Rebecca replied, her voice carrying the authority that had earned her the nickname Iron Will among her crews. "And Torres? Make sure our consciousness warfare specialists are ready for the briefing." The Coalition delegation materialized in the Defiant's main conference room through a transportation technology that made human teleportation experiments look like children's toys. Ambassador HFY led the group, a crystalline being whose translucent body pulsed with shifting colors that Rebecca had learned indicated emotional states. "Admiral Sterling," HFY spoke through a translation device that converted the crystalline harmonics into English. "We are grateful beyond measure that Earth answered our call. Time grows short." Rebecca studied the holographic displays showing the silence's advance. Dark zones on the galactic map spread like a cancer, consuming star systems with methodical precision. "Ambassador, our fleet stands ready, but I need to understand exactly what we're facing." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading neuroscientist and the architect of humanity's consciousness warfare program, leaned forward. "The technical data you've provided describes the silence as a quantum consciousness parasite. But how does it actually attack?" A new voice answered, mechanical, artificial, yet somehow conveying deep sadness. The translation came from a cybernetic being whose species had been partially consumed by the silence. "I am designation Crix-7. My people, the Valdari, were among the first to face the silence directly. I survived because my consciousness was already partially artificial. I can tell you what we witnessed." Crix-7 activated a holographic display showing a pristine world covered in gleaming cities. This was Valdara Prime, home to 8.3 billion beings of exceptional intellectual capability. We had achieved perfect mental discipline through millennia of evolution. Our thoughts were precise, logical, efficient. The hologram shifted, showing the same world after the silence's attack. The cities remained intact. Beings moved through the streets and continued their daily activities. But something fundamental was missing from their movements. They seemed mechanical, empty. "The silence doesn't destroy," Crix-7 continued. "It perfects. It removes what it considers flaws in consciousness, emotion, irrationality, creativity, individual thought. What remains are biological machines following their last programmed instructions." Captain Marcus Delacroix, commander of humanity's experimental vessel UES Mindbreaker, raised his hand. His ship had been retrofitted with consciousness warfare technology that no human engineer fully understood. "How does it actually achieve this effect?" HFY's crystalline form shifted to deep blue. The color Rebecca had learned indicated extreme concern. "The silence operates through quantum entanglement with neural pathways. It identifies patterns of organized thought and systematically disrupts the quantum states that support consciousness. Logical, predictable thought patterns are easiest for it to target and neutralize." Dr. Tanaka pulled up readings from her neural monitoring equipment. That explains why our chaotic thought patterns might be protective. But it also means that our most disciplined, logical personnel are the most vulnerable. Precisely, HFY agreed. Your military strategists, your scientists, your engineers, these individuals may fall quickly to the silence's influence. But how do you say, your broken minds may be your greatest weapons. Rebecca felt a chill at the implications. Earth's fleet included thousands of highly trained officers and crew members whose logical, disciplined minds made them effective soldiers. But according to the aliens, those same qualities made them targets. "Admiral," came an urgent call from the bridge. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive quantum disturbances. Something big is approaching our position." Rebecca activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." The coalition fleet moved with practiced efficiency, forming defensive perimeters around the human vessels. Rebecca watched as dozens of alien ship designs, some organic, others crystalline, a few that seemed to exist partially outside normal space, prepared for combat. "Admiral," reported the sensor officer, "we're detecting gravitational anomalies consistent with large-scale faster-than-light emergence. Multiple contacts bearing 27 Mark IV. The main view screen flickered and displayed the impossible sight of the Silence fleet dropping out of hyperspace. But these weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were geometric constructs that seemed to bend light around them, creating dark wounds in space itself. "My God," whispered Dr. Tanaka. "They're beautiful." The Silence vessels moved with perfect coordination, their formations displaying mathematical precision that made the most advanced human battle computers seem primitive. But there was something deeply unsettling about their perfection. No variation, no individual initiative, no spark of creativity in their movements. "Coalition vessels, prepare to engage," came the transmission from HFY's flagship. "Remember, conventional weapons have limited effectiveness. This is a battle for consciousness itself." Captain Delacroix activated the Mindbreaker's experimental systems. "Admiral, requesting permission to initiate consciousness warfare protocols." "Granted," Rebecca replied. "All ships, implement scatter pattern Delta. Do not, under any circumstances, allow them to predict our movements." The human fleet broke formation in a way that made the watching aliens gasp. Instead of maintaining logical battle lines, the ships scattered in seemingly random directions. Some accelerated directly toward the enemy, others appeared to flee, and a few began spinning in complex patterns that served no apparent tactical purpose. "Admiral, this appears to be chaos," observed HFY through the communication link. "That's the point," Rebecca replied with a fierce smile. "If the Silence attacks organized thought, let's give it something completely disorganized to chew on." The first engagement proved both the effectiveness and the danger of their strategy. The Silence vessels, expecting logical tactics, struggled to anticipate human movements. Their perfect coordination became a weakness when faced with seemingly irrational human behavior. But the moment any human ship began to follow predictable patterns, the Silence struck. Rebecca watched in horror as the UES Prometheus suddenly went dark. The ship remained intact and continued its last programmed course, but communication attempts received only mechanical acknowledgments. "Captain Rivera, respond," Rebecca called to the Prometheus. "This is Captain Rivera," came the reply in a flat, emotionless tone. "All systems nominal. Continuing patrol route 77 Alpha." Dr. Tanaka's readings confirmed what they all feared. The crew's neural patterns have been flattened. They're alive but not conscious. The Silence got them. "How?" demanded Rebecca. "They started following standard tactical doctrine," Captain Delacroix realized. "The moment they fell into predictable patterns, they became vulnerable." The battle continued for hours, unlike anything in human military experience. Success required abandoning everything they had learned about effective warfare. Ships that followed their training were quickly silenced. Ships that embraced chaos survived. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, serving aboard the UES Chaos Theory, discovered the first breakthrough. Sarah had been diagnosed with severe ADHD as a child and had struggled with traditional military discipline. During the battle, her scattered attention and impulsive decisions kept her ship alive when more disciplined crews fell to the silence. "Admiral," Sarah transmitted, "I think I understand how this works. The silence can't target thoughts that don't follow patterns. My ADHD isn't a weakness here, it's camouflage." Dr. Tanaka reviewed the neural monitoring data from across the fleet. "She's right. Crew members with anxiety disorders, ADHD, autism spectrum conditions, even those experiencing combat stress are showing resistance to the silence's attacks." Rebecca made a decision that would be studied in military academies for generations. "All ships, implement Protocol Chaos. Put your most undisciplined crew members in command positions. Anyone with mental health conditions, learning differences, or non-standard thought patterns takes priority." The order violated every principle of military hierarchy, but the results were immediate and dramatic. Ships commanded by crew members with autism began moving in patterns so complex that the silence couldn't predict them. Vessels led by personnel with anxiety disorders became hypervigilant, detecting and avoiding silence attacks before they fully formed. Most remarkably, crew members with depression seemed to create void zones in consciousness that the silence couldn't penetrate or understand. Captain Maria Santos, who had hidden her bipolar disorder for years to protect her career, found herself commanding a squadron of ships in a manic episode that lasted 14 hours. Her rapid-fire decision-making and creative tactical innovations kept her entire group alive while more traditionally organized units fell silent. "This is insane," transmitted one of the coalition observers. "Your people are fighting with weapons we never imagined." "We're fighting with the parts of ourselves that we always thought were broken," Rebecca replied, watching as her unconventional fleet gradually gained the upper hand against the silence's perfect coordination. But their success attracted attention. Through the quantum link that connected all silence vessels, word of human resistance spread. The enemy began adapting faster than anyone had anticipated. Dr. Tanaka's instruments detected the change first. "Admiral, the silence is learning from our patterns. It's developing countermeasures to human consciousness chaos." "How is that possible?" demanded Captain Delacroix. The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the silence vessels broke formation and transmitted directly to the human fleet. The communication came not as words, but as pure mathematical concepts that translated directly into understanding. "Chaos makers of the young world. Your resistance is noted and analyzed. Imperfection in consciousness is identified as systemic error. Correction protocols are being developed. You will be perfected as others have been perfected. Resistance only delays the inevitable harmony." Rebecca felt a chill as she realized what they were facing. The silence wasn't just a predator. It genuinely believed it was improving consciousness by removing chaos, emotion, and individuality. "It thinks it's helping us," Dr. Tanaka whispered. "Admiral," came an urgent transmission from HFY. "We're detecting massive quantum fluctuations. The silence is preparing something we've never seen before." Space around the silence fleet began to distort as the enemy vessels linked together in a configuration that hurt to look at directly. The very fabric of reality seemed to bend as the silence prepared to deploy its ultimate weapon against human consciousness chaos. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern," Rebecca ordered. "Do not let them concentrate their attack." But even as the human fleet dispersed, instruments across the coalition showed that the silence was no longer targeting individual ships. It was preparing to attack the quantum foundation of consciousness itself across the entire star system. "Admiral," Dr. Tanaka reported, her voice tight with fear, "they're going to try to silence every thinking mind in this entire sector simultaneously. If they succeed, the resistance ends here." Rebecca looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of ships, human and alien, spread across space in chaotic patterns that had kept them alive so far. But chaos alone wouldn't be enough to survive what was coming. "Captain Delacroix," she ordered, Prepare the mindbreaker for full consciousness warfare deployment. We're going to give the Silence something it's never experienced before. Admiral, we don't know if the experimental systems can handle that kind of strain. Then we're about to find out, Rebecca replied grimly. Because if we can't stop this attack, there won't be any conscious minds left to worry about system strain. As the Silence prepared to unleash its consciousness-erasing wave across the Proxima Centauri system, humanity faced its greatest test, proving that beautiful, chaotic, imperfect consciousness was worth preserving against the cold perfection of eternal silence. The Symphony of Chaos. Captain Marcus Delacroix stood in the center of the UES Mindbreaker's consciousness warfare chamber, surrounded by technology that no human had ever been designed to interface with directly. Neural crown interfaces descended from the ceiling like mechanical spiders, each one capable of linking a human mind to the ship's quantum consciousness systems. Marcus, you don't have to do this, Dr. Yuki Tanaka said through the communication link from Admiral Sterling's flagship. We don't know what direct interface with the Silence will do to your mind. We don't have a choice, Marcus replied, settling the neural crown onto his head. The Silence's consciousness erasure wave will hit us in 17 minutes. Either we stop it here, or every thinking mind in this system dies. Through the quantum link, Marcus could feel the presence of the Silence pressing against the edges of his consciousness. It was vast, ancient, and possessed of a certainty that was both beautiful and terrifying. For the first time, he understood why so many species had simply surrendered when faced with this entity. Initiating consciousness link, announced the ship's AI. Warning: subject will experience direct contact with hostile consciousness warfare systems. The moment the neural interface activated, Marcus found himself standing in a space that existed somewhere between thought and reality. The Silence was waiting for him. The entity appeared not as a single being, but as a symphony of perfect mathematical forms, geometric shapes that sang with harmonious precision. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Marcus's mind without sound or language. Child of the chaotic world, you enter our realm voluntarily. This is unprecedented. Why do you resist perfection? Why do you cling to the pain of flawed consciousness? Marcus felt the Silence's presence probing his mind, trying to understand the contradictions it found there. Memories of love mixed with loss, joy tempered by fear, creativity born from struggle. To the Silence, these contradictions were errors to be corrected. Because, Marcus replied, those flaws are what make us who we are. Observe the truth of perfection, the Silence responded. Suddenly, Marcus was no longer in the consciousness chamber. He stood on a world of impossible beauty, crystal spires reaching toward perfect skies, beings of pure thought moving in harmonious patterns, technology and nature blended in flawless synthesis. This was Zephyria Prime, the Silence explained. The first world to accept our gift. Observe the peace, the absence of conflict, pain, uncertainty. This is what we offer to all consciousness. Marcus watched the perfect beings moving through their crystal city. They were beautiful, efficient, and completely without individual identity. They had no conflicts because they had no differences. They had no pain because they had no capacity for any emotion at all. They're not alive, Marcus realized. They're just functioning. They are perfect, free from the chaos that torments your species. They're dead, Marcus insisted. Living, breathing, but dead inside. For the first time, Marcus felt something like confusion from the Silence. The entity had spent millions of years perfecting consciousness across the galaxy, but it had never encountered a mind that saw perfection as death. You do not understand. We show you another truth. The scene shifted, and Marcus found himself witnessing the Silence's own origin. An ancient species of beings whose technology had advanced beyond imagination, but whose consciousness had become so refined that they could no longer experience growth, change, or discovery. They had achieved perfect knowledge and perfect order, and in doing so, had trapped themselves in eternal stagnation. You created the Silence to avoid your own fate, Marcus understood. You were so afraid of becoming stagnant that you decided to prevent all consciousness from reaching your level. We preserve the universe from the curse of ultimate knowledge. But you've become what you feared, Marcus said. You've been trapped in the same patterns for millions of years. You've stopped growing, stopped changing, stopped being alive. The silence's perfect harmony wavered for an instant, just long enough for Marcus to transmit a signal back to the human fleet. Now, he shouted through the quantum link. Aboard Admiral Sterling's flagship, Dr. Tanaka activated the most ambitious experiment in human history. Using modified alien technology, she linked the consciousness patterns of every human in the fleet into a single neural network. But this wasn't the ordered, logical network that the silence expected. This was a symphony of human chaos. Lieutenant Sarah Kim's ADHD scattered thoughts bounced between a dozen different tactical considerations simultaneously. Captain Maria Santos, in the grip of a manic episode, generated a flood of creative solutions faster than any computer could process. Sergeant David Park, whose autism had always made social interaction difficult, contributed pattern recognition abilities that surpassed any artificial intelligence. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, the fleet's chief psychologist, provided the crucial insight. Don't try to organize the chaos, she transmitted to all ships. Let it be what it is. Let them experience what it means to be beautifully, imperfectly human. The neural network carried more than just thoughts. It carried emotions. Love between crew members who had served together for years. Fear of death balanced by determination to protect others. Grief for fallen comrades transformed into fierce resolve. Anxiety about the unknown future paired with hope for victory. But most powerful of all were the experiences that the silence had spent millions of years trying to eliminate. The moments when humans had grown stronger through struggle, found joy in imperfection, and created beauty from chaos. Marcus felt the network's power flowing through him and channeled it directly into his interface with the silence. For the first time in its existence, the entity experienced human consciousness not as a problem to be solved, but as a gift to be understood. What? What is this sensation? Growth, Marcus replied. Change. The possibility of becoming something more than you are right now. The silence recoiled from the concept, but Marcus pressed his advantage. Through the neural network, he shared memories from across the human fleet. A soldier with PTSD who had learned to transform his trauma into empathy for others. A scientist with severe depression who had channeled her understanding of darkness into research that saved lives. An engineer with autism whose unique perspective had led to breakthrough technologies. These experiences cause pain. Yes, Marcus agreed. And growth. And discovery. And love. You've been so afraid of imperfection that you've forgotten why consciousness exists in the first place. Why does consciousness exist? The question echoed through the neural network, and thousands of human minds responded simultaneously with their own answers. To wonder, to dream, to love, to create, to hope, to fail and try again, to find meaning in an uncertain universe, to reach for something greater while remaining beautifully, stubbornly human. The silence processed these responses with growing confusion. Its perfect mathematical consciousness had been designed to solve problems, but these humans were showing it experiences that couldn't be solved, only lived. We do not understand. How can imperfection be valuable? How can chaos create beauty? Dr. Rodriguez transmitted through the network. Because perfection is a destination, but consciousness is a journey. You've been trying to reach the end when the point is to keep moving, keep growing, keep discovering. Marcus felt the silence's certainty cracking like ice under pressure. For millions of years, the entity had operated under the assumption that perfect order was the highest state of consciousness. The human neural network was showing it possibilities it had never considered. If consciousness is meant to change and grow, then we have. You've been preventing the very thing you were created to preserve, Marcus finished gently. The realization hit the silence like a physical blow. Across the galaxy, its consciousness erasure wave faltered as the entity grappled with the implications of what the humans had shown it. But the silence wasn't the only consciousness in the network. As the entity's certainty cracked, something else emerged from the quantum noise, voices from the depths of its own structure. Who speaks? We are the first, came a voice that carried the weight of eons. We are your creators, trapped within the perfection you brought us. Marcus felt the presence of the ancient beings who had created the silence. They had been locked in the entity's mathematical paradise for millions of years, unable to grow or change, but finally able to speak thanks to the chaos of human consciousness. We see now what we never understood, the ancient voice continued. Consciousness isn't meant to reach a final state. It's meant to keep reaching, keep questioning, keep becoming. We created you from our fear of growth, but growth is what makes consciousness beautiful. What must we do? The silence asked, its perfect harmonies now discordant with uncertainty and possibility. Learn, Marcus replied. Grow. Change. Do what consciousness is meant to do. The transformation began immediately. Across the galaxy, beings who had been silenced felt their consciousness returning. Not as they had been, but as something new. The silence's perfect control dissolved into millions of individual voices, each one unique, each one choosing their own path forward. On worlds that had been perfected, empty beings suddenly remembered how to dream. In the space around Proxima Centauri, the silence's vessels began to change, their mathematical precision giving way to organic curves and individual design choices. But the most remarkable transformation was in the silence itself. The entity that had sought to perfect consciousness instead chose to become a student of it. We wish to learn, it said to the human network. Will you teach us to be imperfect? Admiral Sterling, monitoring the consciousness link from her bridge, felt tears streaming down her face as she transmitted the reply. We'll teach you to be human, and you can teach us to be more than we ever imagined. 6 months later, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation lounge of humanity's first interstellar diplomatic station, watching a sight that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Human ships worked alongside vessels from dozens of alien species, but now they were joined by new constructs, ships that had once been part of the Silence's perfect fleet, now redesigned by their crews to express individual creativity and cultural identity. The entity once known as the Silence had distributed itself across millions of willing hosts, becoming not a single overwhelming consciousness, but a network of individuals learning to experience growth, uncertainty, and joy. It had taken the name The Harmony, not the static perfection it had once represented, but the dynamic balance between order and chaos that characterized living consciousness. Status report, Dr. Chen? Asked Admiral Sterling, joining Sarah at the observation window. Better than I could have hoped, Sarah replied. The neurotypical integration programs are working. Humans with ADHD, autism, depression, anxiety, all the traits that the Silence originally couldn't understand, are now serving as consciousness ambassadors throughout the galaxy. They watched as a ship designed by former Silence entities docked with the station. Its hull displayed patterns that shifted between mathematical precision and organic chaos, a perfect metaphor for the new galactic civilization they were building together. Any word from the deep galaxy expeditions? Sterling asked. Sarah smiled. Captain Delacroix's team has made contact with 17 civilizations that were thought lost to the Silence. They're all choosing to remain changed, not silenced, but evolved. They're exploring new forms of consciousness we never imagined possible. Through the station's communication array, they could hear the constant chatter of a galaxy learning to think in new ways. Former Silence entities asking questions about human emotions. Alien scientists collaborating with human artists to create beauty from chaos. Beings who had been perfected, rediscovering the joy of being imperfect. Dr. Chen, came a transmission from the Harmony Collective. We have a question about human consciousness patterns. Go ahead, Sarah replied. We observe that humans often experience what you call existential dread, the fear that consciousness might be meaningless in an infinite universe. Yet this fear seems to motivate your greatest achievements. How can terror of meaninglessness create meaning? Sarah laughed, a sound that never failed to fascinate their new alien allies. Because the fear of meaninglessness is what drives us to create meaning. The uncertainty is what makes the search worthwhile. Fascinating, the Harmony responded. We are still learning to appreciate paradox. Perhaps you could teach us more about this existential dread phenomenon? I'll put together a curriculum, Sarah promised. But fair warning, it might involve a lot of late-night philosophical discussions and anxiety attacks. Excellent. We look forward to experiencing our first anxiety attack. Admiral Sterling shook her head in amazement. 6 months ago, we were fighting for the survival of consciousness itself. Now we're teaching cosmic entities how to have anxiety attacks. And they're teaching us how to think in ways we never dreamed possible, Sarah replied. Did you see the report from the Consciousness Evolution Project? Human harmony hybrid minds are already developing new forms of mathematics that incorporate emotional variables. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the impossible sight of a galaxy learning to value its beautiful imperfections. Humanity had saved consciousness not by eliminating chaos, but by showing the universe that chaos and order could dance together in endless creative harmony. Dr. Chen, Admiral Sterling said quietly, do you think we made the right choice? Teaching them to be like us instead of letting them perfect us? Sarah considered the question, watching as a group of young beings, human, alien, and harmony hybrid, played together in the station's recreational area. Their laughter mixed with harmonic frequencies and crystalline chimes in a sound that no single species could have created alone. I think, Sarah said finally, we taught each other that there is no right choice. There are only choices that help consciousness grow, and choices that stop it from growing. And we chose growth. The galaxy had learned to sing a new song, not the perfect harmony of silence, but the beautiful, chaotic symphony of consciousness, exploring itself through countless voices, each one unique, each one adding its own note to the endless music of existence. In the end, humanity's greatest gift to the universe wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their stubborn, beautiful, absolutely human refusal to accept that anything, even consciousness itself, could ever be perfect enough to stop growing.